emerge into the world again. Those first steps to the chapel at Lindsey were the start of a journey, a personal pilgrimage. I can see that now. I was driven by a keen curiosity to seek out those places where there was a sense of calm that seemed to seep from the earth, or from the buildings that had been built upon that ground. It was a time of reflection in my life. I lived in an old farm labourer's cottage in the English countryside, rather isolated, and especially so in the depths of winter. Maybe it was some more basic existential calling, a reaching out into the darkness. Perhaps I was still trying to make sense of my father's death over 20 years before. Everyone has times in their life when they wish to peer more deeply into the profound reality of what we are as living individual beings, what life is all about. It seemed to me that the easiest route was to look to those who had gone before, to see how others in times past had made sense of the world, how they had seen the land around them. Across human time, certain places upon the earth have been seen as especially significant. I would seek those sites in the landscape which held most meaning. Even though some may now be long abandoned, there were places where there still lingered time-thin truths. The phrase was one I discovered along the way, one that rang so clearly. At first, I turned to the most obvious places, the monuments on the landscape, most overt, most visible as sacred sites, chapels and churches with heavy doors and dark, stuffy insides. Yet there was a tension, an obvious tension. I am not a Christian, though I could appreciate the atmosphere within these religious buildings. Only after visiting St. James's Chapel did I remember Philip Larkin's poem, Church-Going, where he expresses so well that experience of stepping into a church as an unbeliever and knowing a tense, musty, unignorable silence. Towards the end of the poem, in a beautifully simple sentence, he voices that same sense I felt in the frozen space of the chapel at Lindsey. It pleases me to stand in silence here. In that stillness, there is a welcome peace, a sense of feeling grounded. Larkin spoke of the church as a serious house on serious earth. I understood that sentiment, and soon realized the need to realign my sense of what was sacred in the landscape around me. I learnt how the spiritual essence of a place came not only from the religious buildings constructed upon the land, but from the landscape itself, that serious earth. Most churches were built on lands already hallowed. To those who cared to look carefully, the remnants of those earlier sites could still be seen and felt, where far more ancient feet stood on the same ground and knew that space to be sacred. As this project evolved and developed, I dug deeper, ventured ever further back in time until I could see more clearly the nature of the sacred places on the landscapes. Even those of our hunter-gatherer ancestors from over 10,000 years ago. They, too, had their hallowed sites on the land, where they could know something of the numinous, could stand on serious earth, could feel at peace with the world. It is the same for all humans. We all need to feel grounded. It was around 20 years ago that the word numinous began to haunt me. I had recently moved to a small hamlet whose only community building was a church. My dad had died some years before, and I still liked to catch a few words with him every once in a while. I soon discovered on my walks around the village that there was a footpath which ran close to the church, just on the other side of the hallowed ground of the graveyard. The path continued on.